Hi, I'm Naz, live in London on what's been a historic day. After more than 40 years, the UK has decided to leave the European Union. Yes, I'm here in London with a very special Newsround live from the Houses of Parliament. It's been a huge day with the news that the UK has voted to leave the European Union, a club made up of 28 countries. Just take a look behind me. There are hundreds of people still here. We've got lots of media here from newspapers, TVs, radios, lots of people here, all trying to get to know that news on that special moment, on that day when that decision was announced. And I was also there, and this is what happened.
This means that the UK has voted to leave the European Union.
This was the moment we knew that Britain would be leaving the European Union. In the end, more adults voted to leave than to stay in, which left people who wanted to leave very happy. David Cameron has just stepped outside. It's a historic day. It's being confirmed that the UK will leave the European Union.
The British people have voted to leave the European Union, and their will must be respected. I will do everything I can as Prime Minister to steady the ship over the coming weeks and months. But I do not think it would be right for me to try to be the captain that steers our country to its next destination.
As you've just heard, David Cameron has told us he's stepping down as Prime Minister, but it won't be for another 3 months. It's so the Conservative Party has time to choose a new leader. The decision to leave could have a huge effect on the future of the UK. Unlike England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to stay in. Now, politicians in Scotland are talking about whether there should be a new vote on independence from the UK.
I can therefore confirm today that in order to protect that position, we will begin to prepare the legislation that would be required to enable a new independence referendum to take place if and when Parliament so decides.
There's a huge amount to work out before the UK can leave the European Union. Many people who wanted to stay are worried by the result of this vote, as so many things are uncertain. But for many of those who wanted to leave, this is the day to celebrate taking back control. Well, joining me now is Theo Leggett, and it's his job to explain politics to people like you who watch the BBC. Theo, tell me, was today's vote, the decision that got announced, was it a shock for you?
Yes, I've got to admit it was. I mean, I was a little baby 40 years ago when we first joined the European Union. I never seriously thought we'd leave, and I believe the opinion polls, which right up until yesterday was saying it was going to be an overwhelming vote for Remain.
And what about the Prime Minister stepping down? We just heard from him just a few minutes ago in that piece that we watched. Was that surprising for you?
Not so surprising, because I think once he'd lost the referendum that he'd called, it was a vote against his position, he'd led the campaign, he couldn't really carry on. He had to hand over to somebody else who could carry on the negotiations with 27 other European countries to find out where we go from here.
Well, the decision, of course, Theo, means lots of uncertainty. We have had lots of questions from people back at home, and we apologise that we can't answer all of them, but I have got some of them here. Jonathan from Holbeach wants to know, Theo, why the younger generation don't get to vote.
Blame the politicians, Jonathan. They make up the rules, and in general elections as well, there's a question over whether slightly younger people than 18 should be given the vote. So perhaps it's time for young people to stand up and say that they want that vote.
Another question from someone at home. Jacob, who's 10 from West Yorkshire, is asking, I'm going on a holiday to Spain in a couple of weeks. Will this affect the amount of euros I get now we're out of the EU?
Hi Jacob, I'm afraid it will affect the amount of euros you get, because euros are going to become a little bit more expensive for us. But don't worry, you'll still be able to enjoy your holiday.
Well, Theo, stay there for us, because we have got a couple of very excited school kids who have got lots of questions to ask you guys. Do you want to start with the question over there?
Hi, I'm Anisha, and I want to ask, we'll be the first country to leave the EU, so how is there any guarantee that we'll be financially stable and generally stable?
Well, I'm afraid you said it yourself. We're the first country to do this. Nobody really knows what's going to happen, so there are no guarantees. But what I can say is, although we voted to leave the European Union, it'll take us a couple of years before we actually do, so we can work out how it's all going to function in that time. So don't panic just yet.
And the next person to ask a question?
I'm Mariam. Who will be funding for our projects and stuff? Because I know that the Crossroad was heavily funded by the EU.
Yes, well, there again, in a couple of years' time, that kind of funding probably won't happen anymore. That's money that comes from Europe and pays for things like roads and bridges and all that sort of thing. But don't forget, by leaving Europe, we stop paying into the European budget as well. So in theory, the British government should be able to pay for that sort of thing.
And you've got a question there as well, haven't you?
Hello, my name is Ryan, and I'm curious to know how this referendum will change the future of our students and our education.
Yeah, Ryan, you're 13, aren't you? And you told me you were planning to go to university. Well, as part of the European Union, you have the right to go and live and work and study if you want in the European Union. It's possible, it's not certain, but it's possible that in future you might not have that right. We'll just have to wait and see.
Well, we've got time for one quick question that you've got there.
Hi, I'm Shay, and I'm wondering who's going to take David Cameron's place.
Well, we're all trying to guess that one. At the moment, it looks most likely to be Boris Johnson because he's really been leading the Leave campaign. He's one of the more charismatic politicians in the government. But you never know. We've got a few months. Other candidates could put their hands up as well.
Well, thank you very much for that, Theo. And thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Well, Hayley's been to a school in Salford to find out what pupils there think.
The adults of the UK have now voted that they want to leave the EU. How do you feel about it?
Well, I feel happy, but at the same time I feel angry because we pay £350 million a month to the European Union. Now that we've left the EU, we could spend it on healthcare.
We could be using the other countries for teamwork and helping each other. Whereas now that we're on our own, they won't be as willing to help us, so we could lose a lot of things because of that.
Good point. How do you feel about us leaving the EU?
Most people who voted to leave were like over 65, and they won't have to deal with the consequences in future generations.
I'm glad that we left the EU because the cost of staying there we could spend on refunding the NHS and other public services.
I don't feel like I got enough information about it. I'm a bit worried about the future for our generation because we don't know whether it's going to change for the good or the bad.
I think that a lot of jobs will move away from the UK, so I won't get as good a job as when I'm older as I would have before.
Well, thank you very much for that, guys. We've got lots of interesting comments from you. That's all I'm afraid we've got time for here at Westminster. It's still busy behind me. Now, if you didn't get your questions answered, then do head over to the Newsround website where we've got all the information for you there. It's been a huge day for the UK and a historic day. Thank you so much for watching, and do join us at the weekend when we'll have more of the news. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.